Welcome to Reducing Person Dependence, Sharing the Load in Small and Growing Teams with Brushy Fork Leadership Institute. I am so glad you're here to work through this together. Today, we're going to tackle something almost every small or growing nonprofit faces: work and decisions becoming concentrated in just a few people, or sometimes just one person. By the end of our time together, you'll have four things in hand: a clear map of where work, knowledge, and decision-making currently live in your organization, a prioritized list of your biggest risk areas, places where concentration creates the most vulnerability, a practical framework for reducing that risk without building heavy systems, and a 30-day implementation plan that you can start on Monday. This is not about creating extra busy work. You already have enough on your plate, and I do too. Our goal is reducing risk in a way that fits the reality of small teams. First, a quick intro to the work of Brushy Fork and who we are, just in case you don't know already. I won't take too much time here as we're here to do work, but I wanted to share a little bit. We are based in Berea, Kentucky, and we are a strategic initiative of Berea College. Our purpose is to develop leadership across Central Appalachia, strengthen organizational capacity through tools, trainings like this, and partnerships. We want to help communities overcome structural barriers and lead change from within. And we believe that we can help create conditions where local people shape vibrant, lasting futures. All right, ready? Let's get to it. All right, let's get started with reality. When I first started at Brushy Fork, I spoke with an executive director who told me this story. And it's honestly one of the reasons this workshop even exists. And I have permission to share it, so I'm just going to read off what he shared. I got in an accident and was out for almost 3 weeks, completely unreachable. When I came back, I discovered my board had been fielding donor calls with no access to our CRM. Our grant deadline had been missed because only I knew the password to the submission portal and the docs were on my personal computer. And then to top it all off, we had issues with payroll. Now, he didn't mean to, but he had built a system where everything ran through him. I want you to think about your organization. If one key person stepped away for 2 weeks, how would your work be affected? Would critical work stop completely? Would things slow down significantly? Would operations continue to run fairly smoothly? Who could possibly step in? I want you to take a moment and be honest with yourself. Be specific. What's one responsibility that feels risky to you? Something where you think, if I'm not there, this could be a major problem. I want you to write it down at the top of your workbook or on a piece of paper. Just one thing that comes to mind first. If you're working through this as a team, share what you wrote with each other. Notice if similar themes come up: finances, donor relationships, grant deadlines. That's not failure, that's completely normal. This is what happens in small teams. Work concentrates. And today, we're going to do something about it. Here's the structure we're going to use today. Everything we do fits inside this 4-step practice. First, we'll map where work, knowledge, and decision-making currently lives. Then we'll triage it, because you can't fix everything at once, and honestly, you shouldn't. We'll prioritize your top 2 to 3 risk areas. Next, we'll use a simple who, what, if framework to identify one concrete step you can take to reduce each risk. And finally, we'll stabilize by creating a 30-day plan to make that step real. We're not building a dozen new tools here. In fact, you'll notice that they build on each other. We're building one repeatable practice, though, that you can use over and over with your teams. You can use this quarterly, when you onboard new staff, when someone leaves, or any time that you notice that the work is concentrating again. It's a practice, not a one-time fix. We're working to build resilience. Step 1. You'll find a link to the workbook in the description of this video. If you haven't already, go ahead and grab that now. You'll click on the link and select Use as Template to copy the workbook to your Google Drive. If you need to download it and use Word on your computer, there's a link for that too. Or you can simply work through these exercises by hand or on a whiteboard, which is actually my favorite way to do this work. Pause for a moment and let you go find that. All right, if you've pushed unpause and we're ready to go, we're moving on to step 1, mapping. For each area, finance, programs, funders, operations, and governance, ask yourself, who currently holds this responsibility? Who makes the key decisions in this area? And if they were gone, what happens? Does it stop? Does it slow down? Or does it survive? You're not looking for perfection here. You're looking for patterns. Where is work concentrated? Where is knowledge concentrated? Where is decision-making authority concentrated? Where are you, or one other person, the only one who knows how to do something, or the only one authorized to decide something? I want you to pause this video and take 5 to 7 minutes to work through your map. Try to complete at least 3 areas before moving forward. I'll be here when you get back. Now that you've mapped where work lives, let's dig into what you're seeing. Take a moment to reflect on these questions. What surprised you when you looked at your map? Was there an area where you didn't realize how concentrated things were? Where are you most concentrated? What's the area where if something happened to you or one key person, things would totally stop or they would slow down significantly, enough for others to notice? If you're working through this with a partner or a team, share your maps with each other for 3 to 4 minutes. Talk through what surprised you and where you see the most concentration. If you're working solo, write down your answer to this prompt. I'm most concentrated in, and just fill in the blank. In my experience facilitating this workshop, most people notice concentration in one of these areas: finance, donor relationships, or program-specific knowledge. You're not alone in this. You've now mapped the landscape. You can see where work lives. Now it's time to triage what matters most. Here's the reality. You can't fix everything. You don't have the time, you don't have the capacity, and honestly, you don't need to. And if you try, you will burn yourself out. Ask me how I know. Some of what you mapped is actually working fine. Some of it has a natural backup, and some of it can wait. What we need to identify is your highest risk areas, the places where concentration creates real vulnerability. By risk, I mean if this person is unavailable, we face consequences like lost funding, missed deadlines, damaged relationships, or work that simply stops. I'm going to give you a triage sort framework. It has 5 categories. Critical to protect now. If this fails, we lose funding, credibility, or legal standing. Needs backup. If the person holding this left tomorrow, we'd be in crisis within 2 weeks. Can pause if needed. Important, but could wait 30 to 60 days without major consequences. Overbuilt or can simplify. We're doing more than necessary. There's a lighter version of this. Should stop. This no longer serves our mission, or it drains resources from higher priorities. The should stop one is my favorite. Instead of New Year's resolutions, I create a stop doing list each year, and it is powerful. Here's your task. Take the highest risk items from your map and sort them into these categories. And then, this is critical, circle only 2 to 3 items. Which do you need to address in the next 30 days? You must choose. That constraint is what makes this work. You have 6 to 8 minutes to work on this. When you circled 2 to 3 priorities, you're ready to move forward. Now, you've circled your 2 to 3 priorities. I want you to pressure test them. If you're working with a partner or a team, share your circled priorities with each other for 4 to 5 minutes. Ask each other these 3 questions. Why did these rise to the top? What makes them your highest risk areas? Do these feel like the right priorities, or are you circling what you think you should prioritize? And be honest. If you could only pick one to address in the next 30 days, which would it be? And if you're working solo, write out your answers to those 3 questions. Be honest with yourself about that last one. If you could truly only pick one, which would it be? Again, you're going to pause here for 4 to 5 minutes. That if you could only pick one question often creates clarity. Sometimes constraint helps us see what really matters. This is where the highest risk lives. This is where burnout concentrates. This is where we're going to focus our energy today. Let's address the emotional side before we build solutions. What makes sharing work feel so hard? Some of what you're holding you built with care. Some of it reflects standards that you've worked hard to maintain. Some of it still represents trust that you've earned over time. It makes sense that sharing that work brings up questions around whether someone else will do it the way that you would. What if the quality changes? Or what if you lose the part of your role that you're good at? Those are all very valid questions. But here's what we're building today: a way to share the responsibility without lowering the standard. You can build a backup without lowering the bar. You can create resilience without losing quality. We're creating a structure that protects your work, your people, and you. But it's still a hard thing to navigate at times. There's a framework for navigating transitions, the emotional work of moving from how we've always done things to a new way of doing things. It's called Old Shore, Transition Zone, New Shore, and we've linked to it in the workbook resources. If you want to explore the emotional side of transitions more deeply, it's definitely worth your time. But right now, we're going to focus on making sharing the load feel safe and be practical. Our third step is the who, what, if framework. We've mapped where work, knowledge, and decision-making live. We've triaged your top 2 to 3 priorities. We're going to now answer 3 simple questions. Who currently holds this responsibility or decision-making authority? This is usually pretty obvious. You already know this from your map. What happens if they're unavailable for 2 weeks? Does the work stop completely? Does it slow down but keep moving? Or does it survive just fine? And if it stops or slows, what's one realistic step that you can take to reduce that risk? Not 5 steps, not a full project, 1 step. That step might be documenting the process so someone else can follow it. Giving access to one other person, logins, files, contact lists. Maybe it's training a backup or simplifying the process so it requires less specialized knowledge. Maybe it's clarifying who can make certain decisions in your absence. Automating part of it, or in some cases, eliminating it entirely because it no longer serves your mission. The key is 1 simple, realistic step. 1 step that is realistic and concrete. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Example 1, monthly financial reports. Who holds this? The executive director. They're the only one who knows how to pull the reports and format them for the board. What happens if they're unavailable? It stops. The board doesn't get financial updates. The treasurer can't make informed decisions. If it stops, what's 1 step to reduce that risk? Simple. Give the treasurer view-only access to QuickBooks. Walk them through the report template. Next month, co-create the report together so they learn the process. That's it. 1 step. We're not redesigning your whole org chart. Just 1 practical shift. So let's look at another one. Example 2, donor database management. Who holds this? The executive director. They're the only one with a login to the donor database. What happens if they're unavailable? It stops. No one can pull donor lists, no one can send thank you letters, and no one can track contributions. If it stops, what's 1 step? Create a second admin login for the development committee chair. Then spend 30 minutes documenting the 5 most common tasks. Pull a donor list, generate a thank you report, add a new contact, run a contribution summary, and export for tax receipts. Put that documentation in a shared Google Doc. 1 step. Solves the access problem, creates a backup, and takes less than an hour. So take a moment. Does this example resonate? Are you the only one with login credentials for something critical? That's one of the most common risk areas, and it's one of the simplest to fix with high impact. We recommend using a password management tool to share. We also have a list of resources in the workbook around password management, around how to create tutorials using tools like Loom and Tango, and we are here to help as you go through this process. Example 3, weekly program facilitation. Who holds this? The volunteer coordinator. They're the only one who knows the curriculum well enough to lead sessions. What happens if they're unavailable? It slows. The program can still run, but it's less effective. Participants notice the difference. If it slows, what's 1 step? Create a simple facilitation guide, not a 40-page manual, just the session outline, key discussion questions, and the materials list. Then train 1 other volunteer to co-facilitate a session so they can step in if needed. 1 step builds capacity and reduces person dependence. Example 4, contract approval authority. This one is about decision-making authority. Who holds this currently? Typically the executive director. They're the only person authorized to sign contracts. What if they're unavailable? It stops. Vendor contracts, MOU renewals, facility rental agreements, everything stalls. Partners get frustrated, trust is broken, and deadlines get missed. If it stops, what's 1 step? I would recommend working with your board to grant signature authority to the board chair for contracts under $10,000. Then document that approval process. What requires a full board review? What can the board chair approve independently? What needs legal review first? One conversation, one document, and a big reduction in bottleneck. This shows that the framework doesn't just apply to operational tasks, it also applies to decision-making authority. Notice something about all of our examples. These aren't huge, complicated projects. Instead, we're working with small, concrete steps. They respect the reality of small teams. They don't assume you have unlimited capacity. And they're things that you can actually do in the next 30 days. Take a moment to reflect. Which type of step feels most doable for you right now? Documenting a process, sharing access logins, training a backup person, clarifying decision-making authority, simplifying something that's too complicated? All of these are valid paths forward. Now, it's your turn. You have 2 to 3 priorities from your triage sort. Now you're going to complete the who, what, if worksheet for each one. Who holds it? What happens if they're unavailable? And if it stops or slows, what's one step? Remember, this framework works for both responsibilities and decision-making authority. If one of your priorities involves decision-making, like who approves contracts or who sets program direction, your one step might include clarifying who can make that decision in your absence. At the bottom of your worksheet, you'll see a list of common risk reduction steps. Use that if you get stuck. I want you to pause and take about 6 to 8 minutes to work through this. That's roughly 2 to 3 minutes per priority. And you need to complete at least one full who, what, if assessment before moving forward. Now that you drafted your who, what, if assessments, let's pressure test them. If you're working with a partner or a team, share one of your assessments with each other for 4 to 5 minutes and ask each other, is that step realistic given your current capacity? Is there an even simpler way to get it done? What might get in your way? And if you're working solo, review what you wrote and ask yourself those same questions. Be brutally honest with yourself. The goal is to make sure the step you identified is actually doable, not aspirational. Doable. Write down any adjustments you need to make, and we're going to pause here for 4 to 5 minutes. Before we move into your 30-day plan, I want to ask, what changed when you saw it written out? Did anything feel lighter, more doable, clearer? Take a moment to reflect on that. Or if you're working as a team, share with each other. In my experience, people often notice things like, it feels less overwhelming. I realized it's simpler than I thought. I can see a path forward. I know what to do next. That shift from this is too big to I can take one step, that's the shift that creates change. Now, let's lock it in. Step 4 is to stabilize. Clarity feels really good in the moment, but without structure, it fades. We need rhythm, dates, and clear done markers. You've identified one concrete step to reduce your highest priority risk, a 30-day plan. Take about 5 to 7 minutes to complete your 30-day stabilization plan. Pick one of your who, what, if steps, your highest priority, and break it down into weekly actions. Assign specific dates. Define what done looks like. Not made progress, not started to work on it. What does done actually look like? And at the bottom, answer 2 questions. What might get in my way? And what support do I need? Don't skip those. They are your early warning system. And this is meant to be quick. We don't want or need novels, just clear, concrete milestones. I'll be here when you're done. Come back in about 5 to 7 minutes. Let's come back to where we started today. The plan was to create a framework or a system for reducing person dependence. You've gone through the worksheet and you've completed these, for lack of a better word, a form. And instead of just filling that information in for yourself, what you've actually done is also created a system for a successful handoff. Not just the thought of, hey, I should delegate this. You've created a system that shows you exactly how to hand off work so that it actually works. Think about the last time you tried to delegate something and it didn't stick. What happened? Usually, one of these 3 things. 1, you didn't give them the information they needed. They had to keep coming back to you with questions. 2, you didn't give them the authority or access they needed, and they had to wait for you to approve every step. 3, they didn't know what done looked like. So they did it differently than you would have, and you had to redo it. You'll notice at the top that we had failed delegation ? I'd like to point out that this is not failed delegation. It's an incomplete handoff. This framework, it fixes that. The map part tells you what knowledge and access they need. Who, what, if, that tells you the one step that makes handoff possible. The documentation, the training, the access, and the clarity. Stabilize gives you the structure to implement changes or to delegate the task. And, critically, you define what done looks like up front so they know, and you know, and there's no confusion. That's how you hand off work that actually sticks, how you build a team that can carry the work without you being the bottleneck. And that's how you create space to do the work only you can do, the strategic leadership your organization needs. The goal is clarity about where your time is most needed, and building systems so everything else doesn't depend on you. Use this framework every time you're ready to hand something off. It works. This is a practice you can return to anytime you're preparing to hand something off. When you bring on new team members or volunteers, when someone leaves, or if you notice burnout signals are showing up again. And especially when you feel yourself coming down with the flu and you ask yourself, oh my gosh, if I'm out for 2 weeks, what will stop? Over time, you'll have systems that allow you to be out when you're sick and when you're on vacation. Map, triage, who, what, if, stabilize. That's how you build resilience without building a bunch of extra paperwork. And over time, this protects your work, your team, and you from unnecessary burnout. Before we close, a few things. All of the tools that we use today, your responsibility, knowledge, and decision map, your triage sort, your who, what, if worksheet, 30-day plan, and a one-page reference card for this whole framework are yours to use today and in the weeks to come. You will find them all in the workbook. If you want to go deeper on the emotional side of transitions, I've included a link to the Old Shore Transition Zone New Shore framework from Touchstone Guides. It's a beautiful resource. If you're stuck or you want to talk through what's working or where it's not, reach out. I mean it. You can find my contact information at Brushy Fork's website. And thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work and your part in nurturing a thriving Central Appalachia. If you found this helpful, I'd love to hear from you. And if there's a way that we can better serve leaders like you, please let us know. Bye for now.